Good morning. It's Wednesday, November 26th. You are watching The Really Big Show on NowMedia. I'm Andrea Jensen-Berg, filling in for Jim Check, and with me, Ian Burns. How are you today?
I'm swell as heck. How are you?
Swell as heck as well. It's always a lot of news these days. Focus turns to carbon capture, but Green's not impressed. Is Carney to blame for Nutrien's decision to choose the U.S.? Carney also apologizing for his "who cares" comment. Not one, but two Jolie blunders. And Ukraine agrees to a peace proposal. So starting it off, Prime Minister Mark Carney apologized in the House of Commons for his "who cares" comment when asked about trade relations with the States. The comment was widely criticized as tone-deaf, as many Canadians do indeed care. And we've got a clip of him at the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, on the night of the election, when I had the great honor from my constituents of being elected as a deputy of this House, unlike some others in the chamber today, I made a promise to Canadians. When I make a mistake, I'll admit it. That was a poor choice of words about a serious issue. And the serious issue is, what progress are we making structurally? Best deal in the world, strongest budget in the world, and the most new trade deals in the world.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister did make a mistake. He's made many mistakes. In fact, it's been nothing but mistakes when it's come to trade. Look at it. This Prime Minister promised that he would negotiate a win on softwood lumber. Now he says, who cares? Well, Conservatives care. Within 80 days of the Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, taking office, he managed to eliminate American tariffs on softwood lumber and get refunds of them. This Prime Minister has now had 8 months, and those tariffs have now more than tripled. Prime Minister asks, who cares? I can tell you, on behalf of all the MPs on this side, we care about the jobs that are being lost in Lumbertown. Why doesn't he?
Mr. Speaker, this government cares about creating jobs in this country. That's why we proposed a budget before this House that catalyzes $1 trillion of investment over 5 years. The member opposite and his colleagues, those who could make it into the room, voted against that budget, voted against Canadian workers, voted against Canada's future. We believe in this country, Mr. Speaker, and we are building it.
Not sure if we can conflate the Harper days with today, but
The highlight of that for me is that they laughed at the thing he said that wasn't funny, where he made a joke about Pierre Poilievre not being elected.
Hot shot.
And the Liberals were like falling over themselves laughing at that. And then right at the end there, he's talking about the budget, and he's saying, the Conservatives, the ones that made it into the room, which is kind of funny. It's kind of like taking the pee out of Andrew Scheer. But nobody laughed at that. Don't get it, really. It was just because they're not really in it for the humor, are they? They're just in it for the bullying. But I thought, I thought that was rather disappointing from both of those gentlemen. I mean, Pierre Poilievre's guilty, I think, of sanctimoniousness there somewhat. The truth is that the question, it matters what question he responded, who cares to. The question was, when was the last time you spoke to Donald Trump? It's a bit sort of extrapolating and get on your high horse about Lumbertown and all the rest of it. I mean, obviously, as we've said, and as anybody can see, that is his number one priority, is to try and get this deal sorted. It's the number one priority of Canada, basically, and every official in this country.
I think the worst thing he said was that there was no burning issue to discuss with the president. That was worse than the who cares.
Yeah, I would say that was the real screw up. Not who cares, but that was just like, I think he just wasn't thinking. And he was trying to actually imitate Trump, who's been asked on a number of occasions, when are you going to speak to Mark Carney again? And he said, well, I've got nothing to speak to him about. He's just trying to do the same thing. And he's trying to like we said yesterday, he's just trying to give the impression that he's like cool and it's fine and he doesn't need this deal kind of thing. But it did come across awfully, didn't it? It came across very, very poorly. And I mean, it's an open goal. I'm not necessarily blaming Pierre Poilievre and the rest of them for jumping on this. It's obvious. It's almost like it's too easy. You've got to seize hold of that. But it is still a little bit kind of disappointing. It's a bit like a pantomime, isn't it, when you watch from the outside? But that's politics for you.
Yep. And the Ottawa-Alberta Memorandum of Understanding drops tomorrow, but it's basically been confirmed through sources that while the feds are loosening regulations, the real barriers, private funding, Indigenous approval, negotiations with BC, remain untouched. So we've got another clip from the House of Commons discussing this issue, but yeah, we basically already know what's going to be in the announcement tomorrow.
Speaking of Canadian interest, this Prime Minister opposed the pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific, just like his Liberal predecessor blocked that same pipeline. On Thursday, he'll make one of his grand announcements, waving around a meaningless so-called Memorandum of Understanding. If it's anything other than a public relations ploy, why won't he say, on what date will construction begin on a pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific?
Hear it, hear it. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, sometimes the question reveals everything. The Memorandum of Understanding that we're negotiating with Alberta creates necessary conditions but not sufficient conditions because we believe in cooperative federalism. We believe the government of British Columbia has to agree. We believe that First Nations right holders in this country have to agree and support. All stakeholders have to back. That's one Canada.
Necessary conditions, but not sufficient conditions. Pretty disappointing on Alberta's side, I'm sure.
Well, I think the most disappointing thing, or the most kind of horrifying thing, unless it's just yet another poor choice of words from this Prime Minister that struggles so much with words, is that he said the BC government must agree. And also all First Nations must agree. He said something about a consensus, I think was the word he used at the end there, wasn't it? That's not going to happen. The BC government's never going to say yes to this. And there are some First Nations that are just completely intransigent on this issue. They will never, ever, under any circumstances, say yes to this. So if that's true, what he just said in the Commons there, then this pipeline is dead already. It's dead on arrival. It's not going to happen. 100% guarantee will not happen. So you kind of have to ask that question to Mark Carney, and I'm sure he'll be asked that tomorrow. Well, I bloody hope so. The journalists tend to be the ones that actually get to follow him around and ask him questions, don't tend to be that curious, but I would hope he's asked that question. You said it's not going to happen unless BC is involved and unless First Nations are involved. Like, are you sure? Are you absolutely sure about that? Because if you're saying that, then RIP pipeline, it's already over.
It is indeed. Elizabeth May, though, not very happy even with those wishy-washy comments about the pipeline. She's got something to say about it.
Outrageous the British Columbia government hasn't been involved. It's absolutely outrageous to imagine that the Council of the Haida Nation, the coastal First Nations of British Columbia are clear, as are most British Columbians. So the Liberals will be making a grave mistake, and I think most of the Liberal MP backbenchers are really worried, and they should be. So one just has to hope that these are trial balloons that will be shot down soon, because there's no such thing as a pipeline through British Columbia's northern territory to new tankers on our waters. No way, no how.
Can you elaborate on why you think Liberal MPs should be worried?
They'll lose their seats. And they like their seats.
What stock are you putting into this MOU possibly changing anything? I mean, an MOU isn't a legally binding agreement. It seems there's going to be a lot of conditional language. Like, how much stock are you?
That's just it. I want to read it, and it does seem like there's going to be a lot of conditional language, particularly around the idea of carbon capture and storage. That notion itself needs to be carefully examined because we haven't seen any place in the world where it actually works. So if that is going to be a key component. But again, if there were compromises from the Alberta government that said they would actually reduce emissions or put in place a price cap or a production cap, there are questions floating out there as to what this MOU will actually contain, and that's what I like to do, is read it first. But I'll be looking at it closely.
That's funny, isn't it? The Queen of Green comes out and says, there's no evidence that actually works. Uh-oh.
Well,
So what are we going to do then?
It's an artificial market. There's no value to carbon capture other than virtue signaling, really.
Well, if the entire planet got behind it, and if China and India and the United States and Nigeria and Indonesia and Vietnam and et cetera, if they all did that big time, went all in, then maybe.
Well,
maybe. I mean, but there is a question. There is actually a genuine question as to whether it truly works. So, but that's the thing. Canada doing it, yeah, absolutely. It's 100% futile. And even somebody from a climate think tank came out and said, even if you go ahead with pathways with this one attached to Alberta, that would be so inadequate. Even if you live in this fantasy land where Canada can actually make a difference, it's completely inadequate, this one. And he says you would need 8 of them, 8 pathways for it to actually have any kind of effect, according to these people who are already, I think, a little bit deluded in thinking that Canada can make a difference.
And for those who don't know, this carbon capture technology is essentially huge fans that suck in air, sequester the carbon into some sort of package, you drive it somewhere else, and you bury it. So investing in those technologies as opposed to trees, which do that without creating any extra emissions, I do agree the whole world has to get on board, but I don't think fans sucking in air to get the carbon is the way to lowering emissions. It does seem like just...
There are a few different ways of doing it, but like you can do it with a pipeline as well. I think Pathways comes with a pipeline, and that's the idea, that it'll be piped directly. But that is, even that, like, it's worth bearing in mind that it's quite experimental technology, and it's not necessarily, it's not the silver bullet. And to the extent that Elizabeth May, who is, she goes out like a vampire hunter at night trying to find emissions to kill. If she's not impressed, and she actually is a bit miffed about it, as you can hear, And it's not just her, I should say. A lot of the kind of out there environmentalist activist types, I imagine probably Stephen Guilbeault is also in that category. A lot of them, if not most of them, aren't very impressed by carbon capture. It's not a technology that the green movement or the more extreme ends of the green movement appreciate. They're not fans of it at all.
Yeah, and I think their skepticism is warranted. So it's not looking like we're that much closer to an oil pipeline, although it is probably Canada's simplest route to prosperity and would be a huge step in diversification from the States. And we've also lost Nutrien's massive export terminal thanks to regulations and lingering doubts over BC's coastline. So we're going to hear again from the House of Commons, but it just seems like loss after loss this week.
My question is for the government leader. Last week, Nutrien, a flagship Canadian company and the world's largest potash producer, chose to invest $1 billion into a new export terminal, not anywhere in Canada, but in Longview, Washington. Their message was clear. The decision was purely economic: lower costs, fewer bottlenecks, and more reliable transportation infrastructure. After a decade of Liberal governments, Canada's ports are congested, labor disruptions are routine, regulatory approvals are slow, and promises of streamlining our supply chains remain just that. How did your government allow for $1 billion investment to slip out of our hands and into the United States, giving Donald Trump a $1 billion win, while giving Mark Carney and the Canadian people a $1 billion loss?
Senator Morrow. The government value that kind of investment and you want to have it in Canada. And the answer of the government is the first bill that have been tabled and adopted prior to in the beginning of the mandate. It's Bill C-5. Bill C-5 provide new and the actual budget provide new investment in infrastructure, That was a part of your question because of infrastructure. We know that we need to invest in our infrastructure. That's exactly what the government is committed to. It's committed to by Bill C-5 and by the last budget that have been tabled. We want to grow a strong economy through investing in our infrastructure. And further investment of that kind will be realized here in Canada if we do properly, and that's the commitment of that government.
Old Liberal government, new Prime Minister, same results. And I appreciate the results of the last election. That was 8 months ago. Nutrien's move is a damning indictment of Canada's supply chain infrastructure problem. When a Canadian company says it's cheaper to move potash through a U.S. port, the problem isn't Nutrien, it's Ottawa. How can Canadians trust this government or anything they say to fix our supply chain and reignite and ingest some confidence back into this economy?
Senator Moreau. That's what the government is doing day after day since the last election. You're referring to an old government. I'm referring to old preamble in your question, because since the last decade, Canadians have to make a judgment. They made it last April, Senator Ousakos, and their judgment was to elect the actual government, and their confidence, just like the government, that our economy will grow.
But is it a new government, or is it just same government with a different face?
Well, I guess it's the new guy in charge, and it is strictly speaking a new government. It's a new parliament, but yeah, sort of in spirit, is it a new government? That remains the question. In some ways, yeah, it is a new government. I think that's fair to say. But I have to say off the bat there, what a snooze fest that is in the Senate. God, I think I'm gonna play my kids that at night instead of white noise. That'll send them off to sleep, I think. But the Nutrien thing anyway, which is a bit less sleepy, a bit less boring. Some crazy stuff I've been reading about that, like how they met with the federal government in September, 5 minutes ago, really, isn't it that? And clearly they were not reassured during that meeting that they could do this out of BC, that it was a good idea to expand a port in BC. And it comes down to it. It's talking about boring things, it is almost a little bit boring, or at least it would be for some people. It seems like one of their main objections is a lack of railway capacity, and it's to do with trains. But that, some people find that boring. Other people, of course, love trains. But this is like macroeconomics. This is like big boy economics, the sort of thing that Mark Carney is supposed to be an expert in. You'd think that he would have heard that in September. That would have been communicated to him, that there was a problem with the railways and some other issues with like port capacity. You'd think he would have heard that, and he thought, great, this is a perfect opportunity to build Canada strong. Let's do some nation building and do whatever it takes to improve the railway situation. But clearly that hasn't happened. Nutrien they've not been reassured, so they've thought, well, bugger it then, we'll go to America. So it does definitely raise questions about what is Mark, because you asked is this a new government? You asked that question. It's valid, I think, then to ask, based on this information that we have, to what extent is Mark Carney really doing things in a different way? Like, in what sense is he actually going to break through the sclerosis of the previous governments and actually say things that are just unimaginable based on the last couple of decades, and just come out and say, yeah, well, they needed a railway, or they needed more rail capacity. We're just going to build it, because that's the kind of country we are now. That's the kind of federal government I'm going to lead. We're going to be doers. We're going to fix things. But that hasn't happened. So I think, yeah, you won't be the only person wondering, like, is this really new? Or are we just going to continue to stagnate, but with a bit more sort of panache, a bit more style, and some rhetoric about elbows?
Yeah, we haven't seen action yet, even though the Prime Minister did promise to fast-track nation-building projects. He created that Major Projects Office. And the next story is another one of these projects that's not going forward, the Sissons Mine. Oh. Have we lost everything, Rommel?
Do we have that one?
Oh, my screen's just gone black. Alrighty.
Well, I'm looking at it here anyway, and yeah, just saying that it failed to meet
Next slide. Yeah.
even a single solitary one of 40 conditions required for approval. So yeah, that isn't a very good start, is it? And considering that these ones that were chosen anyway, these projects were already kind of winners anyway. It's not like he was backing a tough one. So if the winners can't even get off the ground, then that doesn't bode well for the more difficult ones, does it?
No, I looked into it, and as of now, 0 projects from the list have advanced to construction or even final investment decision. But one thing we are moving forward, and that's allegedly part of this Alberta MOU, is the Pathways Program, which is an initiative aimed at achieving net zero emissions by 2050 through large-scale carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology. So we got our man, François-Philippe Champagne, to talk about how we're going to be funding that one. It's a good screenshot of him.
It's perfect, isn't it?
I thought you were asking about the... No, something else.
Okay.
No,
I'm asking about Pathways.
Yes.
Where's the money going to come from if we're going to go ahead with Pathways?
Well, listen, I would not prejudge what's going to be the next step with respect to that. I'm very familiar with Pathways. It's a good project, I would say, for Canada. Decarbonization. There's a lot that the proponents have put forward in that, because this is going to be, when we say we want to be an energy superpower, technology is on our side, I would say, in many ways. And Pathways is a great way to decarbonize. But again, that would be a question that the major project office will have to look with the proponents and see, what is a possible way forward. But I don't want to prejudge that discussion that will happen.
À quel point il y a des gens qui doivent encore être convaincus à ce moment-ci?
So I don't know if you heard an answer to that there, but I certainly didn't.
No, just some waffling.
But it's supposed to come from private companies are supposed to do it, but I don't know. I mean, the whole thing, politically, but also technologically, as we just discussed, there's so many question marks. And I've got here, it's Ian Sanderson, Pembina Institute. He's the one that said we need about 8 more Pathways projects if you actually want to achieve a decarbonized barrel of oil in the pipeline. I mean, so it's not satisfying anyone. Who's happy about this? I mean, I can't imagine that the oil companies that are going to end up footing the bill, I don't think they're happy.
No.
I mean, the Liberals seem happy, but are they really? The more hardcore green people like Elizabeth May, they're not happy. Think tanks, not happy. So who exactly is this going to gratify? Who's going to be pleased about this? Because at the minute it seems to be Mark Carney and Champagne. Who else even wants this?
The green technology companies that are getting 75 cents back from all these subsidies for the CCUs. I think they're probably not too unhappy about it, at least. So.
Yeah, what's that company called again? Begins with a B. They've got some business with carbon capture, haven't they?
I've heard
Brookfield, are they called? Something like that?
Billions, another word with a B. We did, however, see a 70 billion investment pledge from the United Arab Emirates. Who knows if some of that will go towards Pathways? It's apparently record-setting, but it's a bit ironic as those billions originate from oil money, which is something Canada is seeming to run away from generating itself.
Well, Arabs have a very good and unique sense of humor, in my opinion, and they love a laugh. So I reckon the United Arab Emirates, if that is the case, that they're going to put some of this money into that and then just harvest it back from the Canadian taxpayer. If that's what's going to happen, I'm sure they'll have told some excellent jokes about that in Abu Dhabi behind Mark Carney's back. Because that is just, I mean, you can't really get much more stupid than that, can you? Or is it stupidity? Or is it some kind of 9D underwater chess going on here?
Climate grift, as Jim calls it.